got some serious talent around here getting to lead us in worship like that. I hope you were blessed this morning by that. Hey, if you have your Bibles, turn to the book of John. We started a new series last week on the book of John, week 2. So if you just are like, oh man, I missed last week, you can actually go watch it online if you really want to see it. Or you're not too late. It's just week 2. We got this, okay? So as you turn there, I just want to give you a little bit of what we started with last week. So the introduction to John, chapter 1, we covered. Man, this is John's thesis. This is what he's saying to us. He is saying, before I get going, let me introduce to you the claims that I am making. I am making the claim that Jesus was the Son of God, that Jesus was God, that Jesus was also fully human, and Jesus was the Messiah. I mean, some pretty intense claims. In fact, these were the claims that got Jesus killed. Right? This is what got him to the cross. Why people were so upset, so mad and angry at him. And now the next few chapters, he's going to go story after story after story. Either Jesus is going to do a miracle or a sign, or he's going to make a proclamation about himself in these next few chapters where people are going to see these truths that John is talking about come to fruition, meaning even Jesus is proclaiming them. We're going to see him in the miracles. They're going to point to him as Messiah. We're going to see him in what he proclaimed about himself. It's going to point him to him as the Son of Man, also being God himself. So all these things we're going to cover in the next few weeks point back to those realities, back to those truths that John is talking about. And what's so crazy and so cool is that in the midst of this, he comes into opposition with many people of religion, faith, people of politics, all kinds of people that have to make a decision about Jesus because either they witnessed a sign or they witnessed a proclamation that he made about himself. And now they're left there with like, we need to make a call about Jesus. And my hope for you and me is that for the next few weeks, we kind of parallel these people as we go with them and we put ourselves in that story and we say to ourselves, what do I have to say about Jesus? According to what I just learned, according to what I just saw, according to what he proclaimed about himself, according to the signs that he just made. So starting with today's sign, starting with today's story, may you ask yourself at the end, so what do I think about Jesus? What do I believe about Jesus? It's not going to change who Jesus is, by the way. Don't kid yourself. But my challenge to you is, what do you say? So John chapter 2 is where we're going. We did chapter 1. If we didn't get to cover all of chapter 1, you can go back and read the last few verses, which are actually super fun. Anybody watch The Chosen? Like the show The Chosen? Okay, we have a few of you. If you haven't watched The Chosen, man, you got to jump on that train. It's so fun. It's like, anybody like doing coloring books? Anybody into coloring books? We got one. Perfect. I love doing coloring books. It soothes my mind. Maybe it's just because I'm still a kindergartner in my mind, but it's fine. But listen, to me, The Chosen, it colors in the Bible for me. It's like super, super fun to watch. And one of the best things in the first 2 seasons is that they show how Jesus went after his first disciples. And in those last passages of chapter 1 is where we see Jesus go after his first disciples. And it's super fun. And in the same week, and John is telling us here at the beginning of chapter 2, in the same week, he performs his first miracle. All right, so I'm going to read it through and then we'll come back and break it down. Sound good? I'm not going to rap for you. I'm going to break down the verses. You understand? Okay, great. All right, chapter 2. Here we go. Verse 1. On the 3rd day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. And the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servant, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servant, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water, they did know. The master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and they stayed there for a few days. This is known as the first sign, the first miracle that Jesus performs. And there's a lot that happens in this passage. So let's just go down verse by verse. So in the first two verses, we understand that Jesus, his mother, and his disciples are invited to a wedding. Like I said, that all came in the same week where Jesus recruited his disciples. And now they're invited to a wedding. When you're invited to a wedding, you usually what? You usually know the bride and groom. One day when you get married, you're probably going to invite, now let's be honest, you're probably going to have to invite aunts and uncles. That's your mom and your dad are like, you have to invite Aunt Karen or whatever. And you're like, I don't want to. I don't even know them. They just send me a present at Christmas time. And you're like, yeah, but they need to come, right? So you're probably not going to know everybody. But most people that are you inviting are what? Friends and family, right? The closest people to you. Which tells us that this family who invited Jesus and his mother, and even now Jesus' disciples, they know them pretty well. There's some type of a connection there. Okay, so they're invited to this wedding. Right off the bat, we learn this is where the first miracle is going to happen. And we learn in verse 3, something bad has happened. They have what? Ran out of what? Wine. Now, let me take a quick detour about wine. In the tradition of the Old Testament, for the Jewish culture, wine was more than just like, hey, that's good wine. Like there was something very symbolic for the Jewish people when it came to wine. It was actually a symbolic representation of joy and God's blessing. To have good wine at your table, to have good wine at your wedding, to be able to present good wine to a friend. It was actually said that God was blessing your life and also that there was joy in your life. This was according to their tradition. This is a big deal to understand compared to what I'm about to talk about, what happened at this wedding. Because here, all of a sudden, if that's your tradition, that wine represents joy and God's blessing, and you just ran out of wine, not at some random party, not at, a lunch, not as just your friend's kickback, but at your wedding, you've now ran out of wine. This is trouble. And Mary knows it. Right? To the point that she goes to her son, Jesus. She knows who he is. She knows what he's about. She knows that he's Messiah, right? And says to him, they have ran out of wine. And I love this. And sometimes it's taken out of context, but it's still fun to read. Jesus says to her, woman, right? It's like, wait, what, Jesus? Now, a lot of people use this passage like, yeah, see, even Jesus spoke down to women or spoke down to his mom. It's like, hey, first of all, no, that is not what this verse is showing. In fact, if you go back and you read the original language, for him to call him woman and not mommy or not Mary was out of respect that he's in public with other people. And he called her woman, who she is in society, not a servant, not just a mom, not just Mary. So it's actually out of respect. So the title he gives her is out of respect. And actually the question he gives is also out of respect. And he says to her, what? What does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. Like, what am I to do with this? Like, they're having this conversation. Now, John, that hour, my hour has not yet come, actually represents the hour of his crucifixion. He's like, hey, my time hasn't come for me to reveal myself to a point of being crucified just yet, according to John's gospel, right? We're not there yet. It's kind of like when in some Insight News, right? Like if Alyssa and I knew some Insight News, like if Alyssa and I knew that I was going to tell you guys some news, but like I told her I would say it at the end of the message or whatever. And like all of a sudden I started talking about it and she started looking at me like, dude, what are you doing? Right? I'd be like, oh yeah, Oh, whoops. It's like, I feel like that's kind of the interaction that's happening between Jesus and his mother. It's like, yo, mom, what's up? You're dropping all these lines on these people. They don't, what do you want me to do? You know? How do you want me to, what? Right? This is this conversation. And I love, because I almost feel like, has your mom ever looked at you with a face, not necessarily like demanding or like telling you what to do, but with that face where you're like, all right, mom, I got this. Like, you know, like they're a mom, right? They somehow can change their faces in such ways that tell you things to your soul. And I believe there's this interaction happening with Mary where Jesus is like, okay, I got it. I got you, mom. Like, because this is a big deal. What's happening here is a very big deal. See, this family needed help. They needed help in this moment. They were about to face something that would trouble them for a lifetime. Why? Hospitality was everything in those times, but especially during a wedding. It spoke to the respect and honor of the family. Your reputation of the family was everything then. Also, if wine, like I said, was symbolic of God's blessing, running out could communicate that God's blessing would not be upon this couple that is just starting their life together. It could communicate that the groom could not be able to provide or take care of his wife and family in the future. Imagine the pastor, right, at a wedding. Let's say you guys go to a wedding later on this afternoon. And everybody's together. The bride looks great. Groom looks great. People look great. Everybody looks great. And the pastor all of a sudden is like, hey, just before I start this wedding, I just want to let you all know that even though these two look good right now, and the wedding looks awesome, they've actually spent every penny on this. And they don't even know what they're going to do tomorrow for food, right? They don't have enough money anymore. And God's not really blessing this union. First of all, somebody would get attacked, right? Like, that dude is fired. Don't ever say anything like that. That's rude. That's mean. But this, what they're facing, running out of wine, is practically communicating that to that community. And so they're in trouble. They're in real trouble. They're about to face some serious embarrassment and shame. Anybody ever been embarrassed? Come on. If you're not raising your hand, you lying. Anybody ever done something, said something to you to embarrass you? Oh boy. Have you ever said something or done something to anybody to embarrass them? How about shame? Have you ever felt shame? All those hands better come up because you lying again. You're feeling shame right now. That's why you don't want to raise your hand, right? Okay? We've all faced there. So we can parallel with these people. Let's put this story on the side for a second. We've all faced embarrassment. We've all faced shame. And what do we do with it? Many times, do we lean into it and admit it? Do we practice healthy confrontation? Of course, right? Of course we do. No, we don't. Do we ask for forgiveness? Not usually. Usually this is not where we go. Instead, it leads to more shame. It actually leads to pretending, to fear, to control, to anxiousness, and so on and so forth. This is what embarrassment and shame does. That's how we respond. This idea of beginning to pretend. Man, listen to what the master of the feast says. He goes to the groomsmen. We're going to come back to him in just a second, but just real quick, he says something so unique. He goes to him, and the crowd could probably hear it because he's proclaiming something. We're going to get to that in a second. But he literally says to him, he's like, at most parties, because I've done this many times, at most parties, they leave. They just give you some good wine at the beginning, and then they just water it down to make it last. Basically, they cheap out. Basically, they pretend. They pretend that they're rich. They pretend that they have it all together. They pretend for those guests that have showed up so that they don't feel embarrassed and shame. Isn't that what we do? We do that. We do that in life, right? If a friend hurts you, which brought a lot of embarrassment, you rather sweep it under the rug than confront it. If you are not wearing the right clothing, competing at the right level, saying the right sayings, posting the right way that is accepted, whatever the heck that is, you risk shame in your world. And instead of dealing with it, you just try harder. You soak in embarrassment, which hurts you. Or you let shame take control of your mind. And that rules you. We do this in life. Guess where else we do it? We do this in our spiritual life. We are not willing to admit pain, sin, what we don't know. At some point in our spiritual life, we figure out a way to survive in here is by pretending we know everything about God, pretending we know everything about Jesus, so that you don't feel shame and embarrassment. That's so sad. When God's like, are you kidding me? I created you to study. I created you to learn. I created you to ask questions, to challenge. I give you a mind to ask questions, to learn more about me. It's not going to change me. I am who I am. But you get to learn more about me because I gave you a mind to ask questions. But somehow, embarrassment and shame takes over, and now we have to pretend. We do this in our world. So we're no different than what this couple is facing in a way. But then Jesus shows up. Oh, Jesus, you're so good. Look at what he does. So much goodness in this. I don't think you're ready for this goodness. Here we go. Verse 6. Now there were 6 stone waters jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Okay, if you do the math, we're looking at 120 to 180 gallons worth of liquid. That's a lot of liquid. Okay? I'm just saying. Let's keep going. 7 and 8. Jesus said to the servants. So immediately, mom's like, the servants did this. It's like that look happened. Jesus gets to work, right? Goes to the servants, fill jars with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. Now the master of the feast had an important job. Okay, he was like day of coordinator. Okay, that's who this guy was, right? His job was, he was head server and master of the ceremony, right? His primary responsibility was making sure the guests had enough to eat and to drink. Again, if that didn't happen, shame, embarrassment to the family. That's what happened there. So that's who this guy is. So they come to this guy and they bring him some wine. Right? And he says, it says at 9, when the master of the feast tasted the water, now become wine. Whoa, hold on a second. I love how John just kind of drops that in there, right? He's like, the water now become wine, and did not know where it came from through the servant, though the servants, he drops this in there purposefully, in a second I'll tell you why, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Okay, so stop for a second. So John just kind of drops it in there. A miracle just happened. A sign just happened. Almost 180 gallons of water has just been turned into wine. Now, some of you are like, I've heard this story. When I was a kid, they gave us juice when they told us this story so that we could remember it when we went home. But many of you maybe have not heard the story. So I'm telling you right now, like if it was the first time. Jesus turned water into wine. That is not something that just happens. Hello? This is a miracle. This is a sign, John is telling us. This is the first miracle, and it's awesome. And this guy tastes it. I guarantee you, this guy has been to many weddings. He's tried many a wines. And somehow, just by tasting this wine, because he didn't know what had happened, he tasted this wine. He's like, whoa, wait, what? This is different. I've never tasted anything like this before. And not only that, whatever wine we've been tasting to this moment, this is new wine. Mind you, you and I partied for maybe 3-4 hours. These guys partied for a week, okay? It was days that went by to party for a wedding. I know you're like, let's go back to first century. Okay, this is what they did. They partied for days. So they had to make the wine and the food last. So this guy must be like day 2, maybe day 3, and he's thinking, oh, we're going to start watering down the wine now. Instead, he tastes something. He's like, this is the best wine I've ever had. So much so that he needs to make a big old thing of it. So he calls over the groom and he's like, hey man, let me tell you something. I've done this a very long time. And what I know is that by this time, people are watering down the wine and giving the cheap wine. Yet you have left the best wine for the end, for the best part of the party. What? It's a beautiful truth here that we're going to see in just a second as I unpack for you. But this is what he's saying. This is what he's doing with that move. He was so impressed. Look what he says. Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. I love how he says it. The poor wine comes out. But you have kept the good wine until now. And then John says it. This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory. And his disciples believed in him. So here's a few things I want us to pull from this story. Ready? First one is this. Who sees this sign? Who are the first ones to witness this sign? The servants. You got to catch that. Servants see the first sign. What does this reveal about the Lord? Already from the very beginning, from chapter 1, we learned that the first ones to hear about Jesus, to witness his baptisms, were those people in the wilderness seeking repentance. Now the first to witness his power are servants. This is amazing. Already, Jesus is showing his upside down kingdom thinking. Already from the very beginning. See, Jesus says he came for everybody. And many people would think, yeah, Lord, but again, to come to everybody and for everybody to know you, you know what you should do? You should go to the kings. You should go to the rich people. You should go to the big politicians who are going to spread your name and they're going to help you. And then everybody will know you. In fact, even the devil tempts him and says, hey, if you bow down before me, I'll make sure everybody knows you. And Jesus is like, no. That's not the way. I came for everybody. And I'm actually going to prove that to you by doing exactly what you wouldn't even think I would do. I'm actually going to start with those on the fringes. I'm going to start with those who are outcast. I'm going to start with those that you don't even see. They will be the first to witness my miracles. Have you ever felt like an outcast? Have you ever felt like you live on the fringes? Like you don't matter? Like you're not seen? What this move that Jesus does communicates is it's communicating, I see you. I see you. I came for everybody. For the most popular, the most known, to even the ones the world did not see. I came for all. And in order to show that point from the very beginning, he goes to those people. Can you imagine being one of those servants? Not really having a voice in community? Not really being seen in community, and yet the Messiah, which is what John keeps pumping over here, the Messiah, the one you've heard about your whole life, kind of like the shepherds who got to see baby Jesus, right? These guys get to witness the first miracle in front of their eyes. That's awesome. That's how Jesus works. So we can't miss that. The second thing we can't miss is this. In verse 11, he talks about manifesting his glory. Know this, God is bringing himself glory with this miracle. We have to get this idea because it's going to keep coming up. Everything was created to bring God glory. We must never forget it. In fact, it's where we live best. It's what we actually love when in the midst of it, bringing God glory. Our flesh is what keeps us from it, and we choose sin instead. He is all about his glory. This is best for all. Now, we need to understand this because when we can understand that he gets to choose when and how to manifest his glory, then when we look at stories like this, we won't freak out. When we look at this, at these people get provided for, and we're like, well, why doesn't God provide for me? Sadly, we got preachers out there who teach a prosperity gospel and take verses like this and says, see, God is going to give you abundantly. If you just pray hard enough, if you just try hard enough, if you just have enough faith, or you just give, $2 a month to my whatever, then God will provide for you over and abundantly. Look how gracious he is. We take verses like this, and like we always do, we make them about ourselves. What John is saying with that verse in 11, this isn't actually about you. Jesus is on a mission to show to the world who he is so that you and I wouldn't miss it. That what we absolutely need in our life isn't more wine, isn't more stuff, isn't abundant blessings here on earth. It's him. We need him. He's carving the path all the way to the cross. So then we can look at stories like this and be like, whoa, he is the Messiah. Whoa, he is the Son of God. He is God himself. Not so that we can read into it and be like, oh man, why doesn't he like make me a lot of LaCroix for the rest of my life? So then I don't have to go buy anymore. No. And I need you to get that, you guys, that God is going to be about his glory. He gets to choose how to use it, when to use it, the way he wants. I need you to get that now because the stories that keep coming down the route with John, you are going to, and that's okay, we'll walk through it together. You're going to have a difficult time taking yourself out of those stories and looking at it for God's glory. When he heals people, you're going to be like, why didn't he heal my sister? Why didn't he heal my mom? So you see what I'm saying? You're going to immediately go there. And that's not a bad thing. We will walk through that. But we got to understand from the very beginning, he's making a proclamation. This is about my glory. This is to make my son, God is making his son known. That's why he's doing these things. Okay, let's keep going. This wedding, or one of the things you're going to see in these next stories, one of the things that Jesus does is he steps right into Jewish institutions, right, which are established law, established practices, established customs, and he just moves them around and says, hey, I know you're doing all of these things, but do you know why you're doing them? Yeah, you've turned them into things for yourself, but actually they're all supposed to point to me. They're all supposed to be about me. And here he's stepping into the Jewish institution of marriage. Okay? He's stepping into this idea of marriage right at the center. It's actually all about me. It's not even about the big old celebration and you showing off yourself and how much money you have or whatever. Let's translate that for today. Okay? I don't even know how many weddings. Many, many weddings. People see me when I show up. I look pretty young apparently. And so they look at me and they're like, have you? I always get this. How many weddings have you done? I know what they're asking. Do you know what you're doing? That's what they're asking me. It's ridiculous. Like, especially like the dads. The dads always get me. They're always like, oh, hello, son. How many weddings have you done? It's like, okay, whatever. So I've done plenty of weddings, okay? Enough to see all kinds of things and all kinds of weird things, right? And here's what's crazy. How many weddings have gone away from God. I don't know if you've been to a wedding where it's just godless. I'm like, where's Jesus in all of this? Right? Where are we celebrating Jesus? The very most simple act that should point to Jesus has even been somehow diluted and taken by man. Here's the one I'm talking about. One of the things I tell my groomsmen every single time when he's, or my groom, when he's standing by me, I say, listen, when that bride is coming down that aisle, I don't care if a bomb goes off. I don't care if an earthquake goes off. I don't care. Whatever goes off, you're focused. You do not miss your bride coming down the aisle. That is your job. You have one job. One job is to keep your eyes open and look at your wife coming down the aisle. Do not miss it. It's huge. It's only going to happen once, and it's going to be there, and then it's going to be gone, and it's going to be awesome. Take it all in. Cry if you want to cry. Do whatever you want to do, but do not miss that look, right? That whole ordeal is actually meant to give a foreshadow, a foretaste to one day in heaven, the bride of Christ, the church, is going to come down an aisle and be presented to their groom, Jesus himself. Literally, that act is supposed to be pointing to the future hope we have in Jesus. What? And yet people are coming down to the aisle to some hip hop, cussing, weird stuff because that's our song. I'm like, ooh, let's think about that one again, right? Okay, I'm not judging. All I'm saying is Jesus is taking this institution and saying, hey, it's supposed to point to me. Ultimately, all of this is about me. It's not about your shame. It's not about your embarrassment. It's not about you looking good. It's about me every single time. Let's keep moving. You guys still with me? All right. The last one here is this. This story shows us the generosity of God's kingdom. It shows us the generosity of God's kingdom. God doesn't just give us a little bit. He doesn't just give us a taste. Like if you had a glass and you came to him, he's like, can you pour me some wine? Which none of you should because you're not legal. But you say, pour me some wine. It's like he keeps pouring until it like overflows. Like that's what I'm learning from this story. God gives abundantly, overflowing. What he gives here on earth can be different levels of abundance. I get that. Even though I can make an argument that where we live and what we have is way over abundantly than most people have on this planet. Now, in this story, in real time, this is how much he gives. He blesses the servants. He blesses the master of the feast. He blesses the groom and his family. He blesses all those at the party with the best wine. Man, I know we will. One day we're going to get to taste that wine. I know it because it's in the prophecies and it's going to be great. Once when we're Jesus, I can't wait to taste it. It must have been just out of this world. Let's keep moving. He blesses the wedding, the union of that wedding. But what we must understand, he also gives spiritually. We must see the echo here. We must see what God is actually teaching within the story. That he gives abundantly spiritually. Let's go back to the jars. So it says that those jars held the water for Jewish rites of purification. This was the water that Jews would dip their hands in sometimes, or sometimes literally immerse themselves inside before they stepped into their rituals, their religious rituals in order to worship. It's as if I had like a bunch of buckets of water outside or like little mini pools, because we like those kiddie pools. If we had a bunch of kiddie pools outside filled with water, and before you walked in here, I made each and every one of you take a dip. Get in it. Well, why? Because, dude, the world, you're dirty. You need to clean yourself. Wait, what? I just showered. No. Spiritually, you need to be symbolically clean. And so people would get in this water, get out, and then they could actually step into the presence of God. Can you imagine if I did that to you? You'd be like, I'm out. You belong here. What? That's weird, right? Okay? Nuh-uh. But imagine if I did that to you. But this is what they practiced pre-Jesus. And how crazy, put this together, how crazy that Jesus took the jars that are supposed to hold that type of water and now puts his perfect wine inside of it, representing all kinds of things. Because guess what? It actually, in time, it's representing what Jesus provides for you and me spiritually. Fast forward to John 17, where he institutes communion, where he says, if you break the bread, it represents my body broken for you. If you drink the wine in communion, it represents what? Say it. The blood of Christ that was spilled for you, right? So now let's go back to John 2. This wine right here is a representation of the blood of Christ. And not only that it saves us, but it overflows and covers us completely. Do you understand what I'm saying to you right now? Like Jesus is literally saying to them, and to you, to me, hey, shame, embarrassment wants to take over, wants to dominate you, wants to be the thing in your life that just takes over and over and over again. But guess what? My blood covers that. My righteousness, my work covers that over and over again. Not just one jar, not just a cup, but in a way that you can't even count. With this story, he's saying, my grace, my work, my love, my righteousness is abundant, overflowing. You can't even measure it. You can't. Therefore, you can come to me over and over and over and over again. From the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, he's already preaching all these things with one sign, with one miracle. If that doesn't blow your mind, man, whatever. You need to go read your Bible some more. Because here's what I love in the midst of all of this. Another thing he's teaching us from the very get-go. These guys felt shame, right? or they were about to feel shame, embarrassment, right? Jesus takes that away. Instead, he brings honor, right? Because that guy's like, what? Have you guys tasted this? This is amazing, right? He's like, this guy's like honored. This groom is honored. The wedding is honored. Everybody's honored. Already from the very beginning, God making a proclamation, making a stance here. I'm regularly going to trade my honor for your shame. I'll take on your shame. You take on my honor. Jesus, what? I take on your shame, your embarrassment that you would have on a daily basis in your own mind, in your own world, and definitely before God one day. And I'm going to take that on me. And I'm going to put honor upon you. By the work that I did at the cross, defeating sin and death, living a righteous life that now covers you abundantly. Jesus, you blow my mind. You blow my mind when I read your word, and I'm just so thankful for these truths. I pray that this may encourage us yet another day, another week, and may we see your abundant work, your abundant grace, the power of your blood, and what you're communicating here. You're calling us to yourself. You're calling us to not dip into a pool of made-up water, made up of our own attempts, made up of our own making and our own rituals, but to literally take a cannonball jump into the pool of your grace that is overflowing and available to us so that we can live and we can walk into the invitation of your truth, of your work every single day of our lives. So may you cover these students, Lord. May they look to you when embarrassment and shame and sin and hurt and fear want to rule their mind and their life and their heart. God, may you remind them of the truth, that you've taken that away, that you're standing right there, ready to guide them and lead them and to bring truth to bear. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Love you guys.